live. Hey, good morning, good now, everybody. Welcome to another series of the Empowered Wellness series, where I'm joined here today with 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝 from Little Rock, Arkansas. It's going to be an incredible session. This session today, this month, March being Women's History Month, the session today is the Path to the Top. The entire month of March, we've dedicated to talking about how we can empower or enrich women who are in leadership. In the last session we got together, we talked about all the challenges that we've seen women experience at work. And we promised that when we come back this week, we're going to talk about some of those strategies that aspiring female leaders can use in order to rise to the top. Because as we know, it's about 10.4% of female leaders of Forbes Fortune 500 companies. And we would love to see a lot more up there. So today, I'm joined with 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝, who is a nurse, who is a progress catalyst, book author, speaker, and I'd love to kick it off by handing you the microphone. 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let's get this conversation going.
Hello, everybody. This is Georgette. Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm a nurse. I'm a progress catalyst, and what I do is coach people into the next best version of themselves using holistic health and wellness coaching. I'm a speaker and I'm an author, and just happy to be here. And as you can see, today is just Anderson and I, but it's still going to be a very, very valuable conversation. So stay tuned.
Amazing. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝. For those who are just tuned in, 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝 launched her brand. Her brand is called Evolvefulness, and her brand went live last week. So it's super exciting to hear that your brand went live. I hope that during that session today, 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝, you can tell us how your brand has been going so far, be that it's been live now for a week. So amazing. Thank you very much for joining me, 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐧𝐝. My name is Anderson Dinka, for those of you who don't know me. I am the founder of Live Unity. The mission of Live Unity was to empower individuals to dig deep and find that sense of agency to go and unlock their true potential. And what I found out throughout that process was that health and wellness coaches were already doing that. So I figured, why not empower them with the tools and the community and the systems that they can go in the lives of those who they're transforming. And this Empowered Wellness series is just a collaboration of coaches from across the globe. We've got Sylvia, who's in Dubai. We've got Rupsha, who's in Kolkata. They're not here to join us today, but wherever they are, we're sending them plenty of love. And I'm sure they're going to join us eventually in this recording and have an amazing conversation. But let's get this conversation started, 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿. So last time when we came together, bless you, we it's a change of seasons, and I feel like the ice allergy season all over again. It's been hitting me as well. But what I was going to say is like we left off last week with at a really really good spot. We talked about a whole lot of the challenges that are being experienced in the workplace. My first question for you is, what has changed since our last conversation and now? Because I feel like we went in so many directions. We talk about the differences, gender differences at work, differences between men and women. We talked about a lot of the challenges that women face at work. What has changed between then and now for you before we start talking about some of these strategies? Back to you.
Since the last session, what I've found out, because I work remotely now, I stayed in touch with one person who I think we just clicked on day one when we first started together. What I did since the last session was talk to my immediate supervisor and try to connect with her locally, catch lunch, something like that. And she was ecstatic about it. She goes, "Yeah, let's do that." And it reminded me of a time in the past when I was in management and leadership where it almost felt like you could not socialize with the people who were underneath you in your team. And so by me doing that, I was looking for connection because being remote can be quite isolating. And so I was looking for connection and I found it. And I said, you know what? I admire her. She just won an award, you know, within the company that is international. And so I said, well, wait a minute, let me go sit down and just really hang out with her. We're 35 minutes away from each other. So um, that reminded me of, compassion and understanding and knowing where I am in my own growth process as a manager, leader, entrepreneur. So, yeah, that's what happened.
It's so cool. It's amazing that you can spend that time with your leader, even in this new remote, somewhat hybrid world, that you can take time out of your day, meet up with your manager for coffee. That's something which I used to do almost every single day with my manager, and I really, I really enjoyed it because over coffee, we will catch up on all the things, sports, kids, travel, you name it, and it was just a fun way of bonding. And I feel like these days that is missing because everything is so structured, so organized. Every interaction has to be a meeting. So I'm so happy that you're doing that with your boss.
Thanks.
And as we talk about collaboration, right? And I think these unstructured sessions might be an amazing strategy for those who are listening, because some of us who are in structured environments, it's really, really hard for us to communicate what it is that we want in those structured environments. You think about it, if you're an introvert and you find yourself in a team of extroverts, it's probably going to be really, really hard for you to express yourself in that large community. So being able to break out of some of those team meetings and grab your manager for one-to-one, I feel like we're already jumping into those strategies. So
Yes, we are. That's strategy number one.
that's strategy number one. And by the way, if you're listening to this at an any given, grab your notepad. At any given point, you have any questions for us, just drop the questions in the comments or in the chat, and we're happy to answer those questions. I see Mabel's joined us from Little Rock, Arkansas. Sorry, that was from Texas. You're in Little Rock, Arkansas. Mabel's down in Katy, Texas. Thanks for joining me. So let's get into the strategies because I know our viewers are dying to hear what those strategies are. So, Georgette, what do you have prepared for us in terms of strategies that female leaders can use in order to rise to the top?
Oh, there are plenty, but I will tell you the things that have worked for me and the other people that have been blessed and honored and privileged to share space with as managers and leaders in whatever field that they're in. So first of all, as a woman and when you're rising up the ranks, there's this perception of the people that are within your team that you manage who automatically think that you're better than them. It never fails. Never fails. There's always one or two people who kind of are vocal about, oh, you were one of us and now look, you're climbing up the ladder. I bet you won't talk to us anymore. I'm a nurse. So that is a big deal. And I have to give you the first, my first experience as anyone in leadership. A couple of years out of nursing school, I was working at a nursing home. And when I was hired on, the director of nursing told me, I would like you to be weekend supervisor. And I'm going, how does she know that I'm going to be great at it? And I said, yes, of course. I have a bachelor's degree and we had the portion with leadership and management. We had the business side of things, a little bit the community side. So I was confident in my degree. And I said yes. And so the first weekend went well, was training. About 3, 4 months in, that's when I started to really feel the weight of it. And it was a very interesting thing because I'm naturally confident. So and I just kind of breezed through it. I got the whole, why do you walk so tall? And, it seems like you're snobbish or whatever. And I did not understand it at first. And I said, but what are you talking about? This is how I walk. This is how I talk. This is who I am. And the more I heard it, the more I realized, wait a minute. When I was a teenager, that giant growth spurt where you're just like all arms and legs. And I was slouching a little bit. And I remember my mom would straighten me up everywhere in the house. And my dad would tell me, hold your belly in. And, I grew up standing tall and walking tall and being proud of who I was. And I was like, oh, that is who I am because that is how I was raised. By the time I left that job, I understood why. Because when I was in nursing school, I was a nursing assistant in the hospital. And the nurses trusted me with little tasks that they could delegate. And I gained that confidence from that because somebody trusted me, number one. Number two, when I had that first leadership and management job during the weekend, I knew that whole, I just had a natural ability to it, which I really now understand that that's what the director of nursing saw in me, is that she knew I had it. I just didn't know I had the skills. I like talking to people. I'm great at what I do. And that was that for me at that point.
Yeah.
So the next, it takes someone to believe in you, number one. And when I left that job, I understood who I was. So that's number two, is know who you are, know what you want. And before I went to the nursing home, I was working in a hospital where it was great, it was fine. And, I wanted to be the badass nurse, the one with all the IV tubes and lines and gadgets and things. And, all these medical shows were just portraying this really weird, over, they made doctors and nurses look like heroes all the time. But my reality wasn't so. So by the time I got to the next job, that's the first long job that I had. It was ICU, long-term acute care, cardiac unit. It was so diverse. And about a year in, the nursing manager looks to me and she goes, you know what? I need you to be charge nurse. If there are any nurses listening, that is not a role you take on lightly. Because at this point, I was experienced in my nursing career. And I looked at her and I said, well, why would you do this? Like, I asked her, why are you giving me this role? She says, first of all, you run circles around people. I am a morning person. Let's just start from there. I am a morning person. I will run circles and talk your head off at 6 o'clock in the morning with my cup of coffee. Okay. So she liked that quite a bit. The nurses trusted me and she said, you can do it. And I looked at her, I was not sure because I had these nurses who were 30-year veterans. Like, why are you giving me a mid 20 something that role? Like, why would you give that to me? These women are going to eat me alive. And that's not what happened. They valued my perspective. They valued how I approached problem solving. They valued the fact that a lot of the doctors trusted me. And so at that part, I learned really, really quickly. And one of the other things that I also noticed was that I came in with lots of energy and enthusiasm. And of course, scrubs, there was a time in history where I had to change my scrubs regularly to look cute. Let's just leave it there. So, looking good, being prepared, coming in guns blazing, I'm like, let's go. This 12-hour shift is my, you know. And so when I did that, I started learning a lot of personalities. I started to gain a lot of trust in how I spoke with people who I perceived to have a higher rank. For example, the CEO, the CFO, all those people. I ended up sitting in those C-suite meetings quite a bit because I was charged. And when the director of nursing wasn't there, she would tell me to attend those, and I'm going, why? Thank God she did that. I learned so much. I learned
Mm-hmm.
so much. It was insane. At that time, I didn't even realize it. And then I hopped out of there. I did all the cool things, when the chopper lands and when I did my ER rotation, you have your gown, your gloves, and, it was quite badass as a nurse. Take me to any part of the building, the hospital, I could work it there. It was great. It was awesome experience because number three or number four, I've lost count of where I am. I asked for opportunities. I asked for opportunities. When the flow was slow and they said, oh my gosh, we need someone in the ER, I volunteered. When the flow was slow, I've discharged all my patients, I would go to cath lab and I said, hey, I'd volunteer. So by the time I even got away from the bedside, I had been to the majority parts of the hospital. I'd worked in almost every unit, some like the OR, not me. I just didn't do the OR even though I wanted it. But I asked for opportunities and I asked with enthusiasm. I presented myself in a way that it would be given to me. So when I said, hey, I heard they're short in cath lab, I would like to go. And before the supervisor even said anything, I said, I've discharged all my patients. I do not want to clock out. I really want to go see how this is done. And they look at me and they go, you know what? You have 3 hours left. Head down there. And I did that a lot. So once you present yourself with enthusiasm and put your best foot forward, because it took some explanation from time to time to say, yes, okay, fine, we'll let you go. And they'll come and check, is she doing okay? Yeah, she's awesome. I don't know how many doctors are like, why aren't you down here? I'm like, I can work everywhere in the hospital. I'm just helping out. So it got really, really, it sank in. It started to sink in that I was that person. So the last job I had before I left the bedside was the Arkansas Heart Hospital. And 6 months in, this was my first lesson in knowing what you want. 6 months in, they said, all the CNAs like you. The nurses love working with you. We've had compliments from the doctors. We want you to be one of the daytime supervisors. And I went, no, no. She was taken aback. She goes, but you're helping everywhere where it's needed. You're the right kind of person because nothing phases you. It's literally like going there and I'm like, what's happening? Get it over with, right? I do my job. And I told her, I said, as much as there's money in this, supervisory role, I'm not ready for it because I want to be just a worker bee. And she asked me why I wanted to be a worker bee. And at that time, I was still learning to really find my voice and be quite personal with people. And I told her, I said, can I just stay in this position? I just want to be a worker bee. I do not want to be in management or leadership. And she said, okay, but whenever you're ready, you let me know. So at that point in life, my son was 2 years old and he would stop eating right about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He wouldn't eat until I got home around 7:30 or 8. If you're a bedside nurse, you know how those shifts can drag on sometimes. And I would come back and whoever was watching him that day says he's been just hard to discipline from about 3 o'clock. And I said, what happened? They're like, he refused to eat, didn't want to do anything until I showed up and he tried to overeat. I remember having to take him to the bathroom with me so I could shower because I'm a nurse. We can't pick up people, our little humans right outside of the hospital. I have to take off my scrubs, make sure I'm not transferring germs, make sure my shoes are away, all that good stuff. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is not sustainable where he's not doing well and he's not being easy with the people who are watching him. I said, something's got to give because after he eats, he's happy, he goes right to bed. I said, my child needs me. So when that came with the proposal to be a supervisor daytime, I said no. The money would have been actually really good because at that time I was looking to buy a house. But I said no. This child is dependent on me. I have to be there for him. So I left the bedside and I went to a 9 to 5. And boy, did I learn about leadership then. It was insane the amount of things I also learned from there. So I took my confidence with me. I took my self awareness. I took my knowledge of the job. I took my knowledge of how to work with people, how to deal with difficult people. That's another thing that I think when you're rising up the ranks, you have to understand that there are people who come at you just because some people just don't like you and you don't have to do anything to them or cause them any distress. They just don't like you. And then the other people who think you do not deserve to be there will make sure that you hear it one way or another that you do not deserve to be in that position as a woman in particular. And mind you, the nursing field is tons of women. So imagine even within that sphere, it's still kind of problematic because we've always seen that leadership role through the lens of a man. right? In the sense that by the time you sit down with all these guys doing all this stuff in meetings, you almost want to be like them. And that is not how it's supposed to be. Let me tell you where my confidence like shot up to the stratosphere. I was a marketing director for a corporation, and I had a boss who liked being a boss, and he would talk a big game and everything. Mind you, I've ran a building before, and so I know how a nursing home runs. I know how the nursing department should be run. So I go there, and of course, this is at a point where I'm wearing regular clothes now. I'm no longer in scrubs. And if you've ever been young and looked good, you know that I dressed up very well. I presented myself so well, not because I spent money on my fashion, but because I understood my personality and I dressed accordingly. The next thing, you can interrupt me anywhere because I love this story and I'll just keep
No,
talking.
you're good. You've, by the way, Georgette, I love you're in flow right now, and I love it when you're in flow. And I'm intentionally not interrupting you because you're dropping so many amazing gems. I could go from knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing when to say no. Like you just touch on those in rapid succession, and I feel like we probably at some point maybe need to go back and revisit them. But for those who are watching this, and I'd love for you to keep going, Georgette. For those who are watching this, we did a session last year around knowing yourself and never settling for less, or knowing your worth and never settling for less. And this is so huge. And what Georgette is talking about, or what you're talking about, Georgette, is right on. It's spot on with knowing your worth and not settling for less. Because less could be so many different things in so many different ways. Like your child needs you. Anything besides that might just seem like less. It doesn't matter how much more money you're trying to give me. It just seems like less if I can't take care of this human being who depends on me. So I love where you're going. Keep going, please. Take it
Oh,
away.
yes. So I my job would be to go to hospitals and talk to um case managers and get patient information. This is where the marketing also came in. Is you have a shtick, you go there, you say, hey, here's what this building is going to offer you, blah blah blah. And I live in Arkansas, so we have a big elderly population, so that's a big 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 business. And so at some point, this was a fairly new building. And so corporate was like, here's your goal for the quarter. I need you to be able to admit this many people. This is the kind of money we're supposed to make, blah, blah, blah. The whole meeting. That quarter, I hit my goal 10 weeks to Sunday. And of course, I was proud of myself. And I said, yes, I've got this. Turns,
Congratulations.
thank you. And my boss at that time did not care for that. He asked me, how did you know that that was your goal to hit? And I said, we got the same email. We were in the same meeting. That's my goal. This is my job. I'm a nurse. I know what I'm doing. You're an administrator. This is how I understand your job to be, type situation. Time passed, and this person, my boss at that time, did not really care for me at all. And I would have staff members talk behind my back and tell me the things he would say and blah blah blah. And it was usually about my looks, you know. It was somewhere derogatory, somewhere just flat out why. Why would you even say that? And he succeeded to divide the nursing staff when it concerned me because I was not wearing scrubs. I was not the typical nurse that he could shove over there and shove over there and tell you what to do, and you just go and go, yes sir, thank you sir. I had to make it clear to him one day. I walked into his office because it was so much power play happening. It was insane. I can't even get to the details. So I said, okay, I'm tired of this. Most of us in leadership had small children, and if you're a woman listening, you know how daycare will charge you $1 after 5:30 or 6 o'clock for every minute that you don't pick up the kid. So I started losing money, and I'm going, I should be making money at this job. Now I'm losing money. So I get really irritated by that. And I walk into his office one day and I put my hands on the desk, and I was angry that day for some reason. And I laid it out. I laid it out and I told him, I said, listen, you have a job, I have a job. I do not have an assistant. You have an assistant. You're running the building. My job is just me. This is the freedom that I'm afforded with it. I can be in this building or not because I'm actually doing you a service. I had to remind him. Remember last quarter when we hit our goal? you know, I laid it out there. And when I walked out there, I took in a deep breath. I went, and then about 2 days later, I went, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? And the natural part of me as a woman wanted to go back and be like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be so, straightforward or rash or, and I felt it in my gut, like, just go apologize. But then again, I was walking to the office and I saw the way he just kind of motioned to me with his hand. And I went, no way. This is a respect issue. I did not realize that. And this is how I also know that respect between men and women in the house is different from respect in a workplace. And I said, oh, this is a respect
Yeah.
issue. I want to be respected because I have the experience. I know what I'm doing. I've already have established relationships in the community where I would walk in and they'd immediately know who I was. Why would I try to do things his way or let all the negative things affect me? So I told him, I said, I'm busy. I will call you back after he snapped or motioned with me with his hand. I said, I'll be there in about 30 minutes. I had nothing to do. I just sat there, took in a deep breath, and I went in there. I said, this is a respect thing. This is power play for him. I do not want to play games, but I'm also powerful. And y'all, when I tell you, I have never felt, I don't know the word. I owned myself the next few weeks until I quit that job. I owned myself. I owned it so hard because then now it was meeting with corporate where it's like I walk in the room and they're like four guys and one lady and I'm going, what is this? So guess what I do? They're all like in a semicircle and the arm has chairs and I lean back and I cross my legs and I listened. That was the first time I practiced being soft. That's the first time I practiced being in my own skin and understanding who I was and what value I brought to the company. And the more I sat down and they started pelting me with questions, I answered them calmly and just like, okay, yeah, here's the situation. The energy in the room shifted. It shifted because they realized that I was confident, but I was not in their face because they had heard about the whole big hoopla where I went in and I told the boss what was up, and they were expecting that energy. And it was like, oh, okay, so we just wanted to ask this, that, and the other. And they asked me a whole lot of questions. And then the corporate guys were like, you're doing a good job. You know that, right? I said, thank you. I appreciate that. And I turned to him and I said, we're a team, right? We're doing a good job. But I'm bringing in the patients. And he goes, yeah, absolutely. My boss was like, he had no choice in that moment to agree with that. And after that, I realized, walk through this building with so much confidence that people like him, who literally are the money of the building, have no choice but to step back and go, she knows what she's doing. And she's not going to go get in my face. She's not going to talk bad about me, talk down to me, or disrespect me in front of anybody, even though she knows that I'm not really happy that she's in this position. And over time, guess what? He backed off. He backed off. And I heard it from the staff when every time I would walk in the building, like, oh, he was talking about you again. And so one day when I'd had it up to here, I said, okay. I took my laptop, I took my work phone, and I dropped it and I said, I quit effective immediately. This is another part where I realized that as much as it takes a while for us to get hired, I understood after the big meeting, like months before with corporate sitting there, that my nursing license was on the line. And this was a power play to scare me. And I was not going to allow that to destroy my confidence or ruin my livelihood. So I quit effective immediately. And he goes, "Why didn't you give me 2 weeks?" I shrugged, deuces, and I was out of the building. That was a
Wow.
badass moment for me. That was the most powerful ending for me because I got to choose my future, how I worked, and not have walk into a building where half the building is talking terribly about you, and then the other building is like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know why people don't like you." With that job, I learned about likability, which a lot of women want, is likability when they're climbing the rungs. They're like, "But I want these people to like me." Ladies, I'm telling you, they do not have to like you. They don't. They have to respect the
Mhm.
work that you do. They have to respect that you are going to be fair where fairness is needed. And if they don't like it, that is fine. It's okay. We are here to work. We are here to provide a service. And regardless of what anybody said about me afterwards, you know how it is. You meet people in the community and they said, "You were actually really awesome at your job." I'm like, "Thank you." Likability is a problem because even the boss that I just mentioned wanted to be liked so badly that he would do and say anything to get people to like him. What I learned from him is that if you are still a terrible person with how you micromanage or how you talk to other people who you think are beneath you, nobody's going to like you. Nobody's going to like you. What if I acted like him and was this brash all over the place, "You must like me" type thing? I wouldn't have been successful at that job because I would have spent my days trying to get everybody to like me. Likability is great. There are some people who will, but ladies, that is just it's just part of the wrong of leadership. It's not the end all be all. You do not have to be liked to be fair, to do a good job, to be kind, generous, collaborative, and all the great things that come with our natural sense of, putting things together. So fast forward to now, because of that confidence, because of all the other people that have boosted me, because of every time I've climbed up the ladder, is because somebody saw it in me, because I emulated it, I lived it, I embodied it. So it was no longer something I had to fight to get to climb up any ladder to get into any managerial position. It literally took the leader coming to me and saying, "Here's the reasons why I want you to have this position." And they lay it out. And I have turned down positions within companies before, saying, "No, I do not want to do that. I'm glad you think I'm capable, and I do know I'm capable. However, this is going to interfere with this thing that I love doing about this job." Many times people get into that role and go, "Okay, I'm just going to take the money and I'm going to figure out how my life is going to, you know, blend all in together." And then they realize they're more miserable as a manager. Not even because people don't like them, but because that is not what was in alignment with you at that time. That was, you did not consider the outside things. You did not consider the extra work or who you were supposed to be dealing with and the minutia of that position. The money's good, but what good is the money when you're stressed out? You cannot have a decent life. Your family life at home is suffering. You cannot breathe figuratively. You just can't. You know, what's the point of climbing the ladder when your life is going to be miserable? Money is a tool. It's a tool. Does it make our lives better? Yes. Anybody who says, "Oh my gosh, why are you chasing the money?" Look them in the eye and say, "Money makes me do the things that I want to do." That's another thing I learned about management and leadership. Money is the tool and it flows through people. The mantra, right, Anderson? Money flows through,
Ooh,
money
I
flows through
love
me,
that
flows
mantra.
through people. It
Yeah.
multiplies wherever I send it to, and it comes right back to me. Unimpeded, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another thing, is there's a lot of money mindset. Once you start getting to managerial and leadership positions, you will have more of those conversations. Now I'm going to shift from the work environment to the home and to the community.
Beautiful, beautiful. And by the way, just so you know, we've got Coyote in the audience, and she said good morning from Colorado. Thank you, Coyote, for joining us. And it's always amazing having you as part of these get-togethers. So it's wonderful to have you in the audience. Georgia, you're shifting from women rising to the top in the office to outside of the office. So I'd love to hear how this goes. Take it away.
So, what I have to just briefly touch on this. What feminism brought to women, what feminism brought to women is having agency outside of the home where they can speak politically, economically, socially without suppression and creating their own empowerment and organizations and all the things. So I stand on the shoulders of all the women's blood, sweat, and tears over the last century or more, where I can be on video right now with you talking about my experience, which hypothetically, maybe 80 years, 100 years ago, I would have had to have permission from my husband, a brother, or a man to be able to do this. And even then, it would be censored. Don't talk about this and don't talk about that, right? So
Interesting.
I stand on the shoulders of those women, and there's a whole study of the evolution of feminism and the phase in which it is at right now has lost its true meaning, even though the core remains. Is that if you're going out to bash feminists as a woman, you're standing on the shoulders of the women who give you a voice, a platform, the confidence to even do that. So, that being said, out of the feminist movement came a lot of people also asking for equity within their homes because if anybody has read history and if you've watched your grandmother, if you're anywhere as a elder millennial and older, you've watched your grandparents, your aunts, all those women be stifled because they're married. In the United States, it was only in the 70s. Guys, it's not been that long. It's been only since the 70s that the average woman is able to have a credit card, open her own bank account. Because it took a man doing that, especially if you're
Wait,
married,
can
to
you
do
say
that.
that again?
Yep, it was in the 70s where it was no longer an issue for a woman to get her own
Wow.
credit card, open her own bank account.
Wow.
That was the
That
last
just
time there were
that
any
just blew my
restrictions
that
around
just blew
that.
my mind. That's like yesterday.
Exactly. That's what it is. And so I can understand the overcorrection over the decades with feminism and standing up and rising up and this, that, and the other. I bring this up because there's been this, like I said, the phase in which we're in the world right now, especially in the United States, is where it's been that whole feminism mindset of speaking up has been integrated into personal relationships, especially, when the people who are married in any heterosexual or even same sex marriage or whatever, is that you've taken that equity and that voice in there and they've lost the sense of personhood in this sense where it's almost like, yes, I can take care of myself. I am able to do this. I'm a boss. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm this awesome, all these great things. I drink my water, put on my makeup, and mind my business, right? But what has happened is in that effort to have agency over ourselves, we've excluded the men to a certain degree. So across the board, what has happened is there's been an overcorrection. And then now, depending on what side of the world or the internet or community you're in, I'm blessed to have women in my circles wherever I go, where they're finding that balance with their spouses, their male family members even, and being open to listen and learn how to be present and receive masculine energy, especially when they're not in their best selves. So what has happened is we've lost that. And then we take whatever it is at work, because I'm a boss at work. I can come home and be a boss at home. And as much as there's some women who disagree with me and say, well, the reason why we come home from work and still do all the housework is because if I can do it at work, I can do it at home. I say, yes, I agree. Because of the overcorrection, I think the men have stalled a little bit because it's like women have elevated on so many planes. I talked about the grad number of 60% of women in the United States have a degree. Naturally, they're going to get into leadership and management roles. Naturally, they're going to make more money, and money is important for life, point blank, period. So if I'm this big boss at my job and I come home, what I'm expecting at that point is someone who I can have a conversation with and partner with to run a household, to still be seen in the community with my significant other, and still have that respect without anybody putting me down, without the man putting me down. But what happens is that the typical thing that happens is that the men will walk with their women in public and say, well, she's this, that, and the other. They list your accolades, and then there's usually a backhanded comment coming with it. So it's like a tiny little jab. And you're like, I love him and I know he loves me, but why did you have to say that one thing that put me down? So what women see now is that they just focus on those little jabs and they don't care about me. They don't care about what I want. Da, da, da. And before you blink, they're out of that relationship. So what I'm offering women today is to take a step back so that you do not have to get to the point where you're taking all the jabs, the backhanded compliments, you're not getting the recognition or respect. Like I said, respect in relationships is different from respect at work. Men see respect differently, women see respect differently. However, the modern woman has put in effort, and I say the modern woman because I am one. Do I have some traditional values? Yes, but I'm a modern woman. I'm solving modern problems. Is to be able to sit back and say and choose, just like you choose the kind of leadership roles you're in before you get into that relationship, or whenever you find yourself in a relationship, a marriage, with where you're climbing up the ladder, you're making more money, getting more recognition. This is your cue to step back and say, wait a minute, work's going great. I'm killing it at work. Let me check my home life. Because a lot of women who make more money, who are more self-aware, because in leadership you have to get self-aware, tend to have trouble keeping men around, but are excellent at also keeping communities within them. And we know that as men and women, we need each other. So that's your cue to step back and say, how is this affecting my significant other who has been supportive of this all day long? Because if anybody's listening who has a woman that has risen up the ranks at work, you know there's a glint in her eye, there's a difference in her walk. How does that affect you? And I know there are a lot of men who are scared to speak up and say, but you've changed, you're different. And we do change, we change. Not necessarily for the worse, but there's a different level of confidence that we're walking with. There's a different level of ownership and agency that we have that just radiates. So sit with your partners and talk about these things, how it's affecting them, how to make the home more harmonious again. Just like when the man also goes out and gets a big job and he's gone all the time, women will naturally go, you're gone all the time. But men don't know how to speak up. And so I'm encouraging women to have this conversation and encouraging the men to speak up. We can't read your minds either. So I wanted to bring that because that has broken up a lot more relationships than anyone cares to admit. Is that when women get in leadership, unless you have the right kind of man who understands the core of you and is able to stand next to you with pride, joy, and his own self confidence, it's going to be difficult. It's just going to be a lot of tension. So I bring that up because it happens way more often than people care to talk about. I know too many nurses who have risen up the ranks, even just night shift nurses, who have lost a lot of relationships because of that change, whether it's in the schedule, whether it's in the leadership role, that takes you away from the house and gives you less time with the family. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Before we continue, Anderson, I have a question for you. In your
Well,
experience with women in leadership, With your experience with women in leadership, what have you found to be helpful to the group, and how has it affected your personal life in any way?
Hmm. Yeah, very, very good question. I didn't realize that the tables were going to be turned
They're
onto.
turned on you. It's your turn to talk.
Well, before I answer your question, Georgette, I just want to say, first of all, I'm really grateful to you for all the gems that you've been sharing. You've touched on so many different pieces from work to home. And I think it's really, really important for those who are listening to, grab a notepad and take some notes there, because I'm sure one of these things is going to really apply to them at some point in time. Um, I, I was under the impression that respect is the same for men and women, but you just highlighted the fact to me that it's different, and it's really important for me to start looking at that differently. I was also under the impression that leadership is the same in the office and at home. You hear people say from the bedroom to the boardroom, leadership is the same. It's not. It's really not. And I love that you're kind of demystifying and breaking down some of these norms and some of these ways that we've been looking at things, because it's really important for us to take a step back, step out of that normal way of thinking about things, and start challenging the status quo, you know. So to answer your question, what's been working for me, what I've been coming to, um, what I've come to realize is that number one, and I've seen this with a lot of the movements where we want to go and assert rights and equity. I've seen it with the Black Lives Matter movement. I've seen it with the Asian lives. I've seen it with LGBT. When the group of people who feel persecuted, underprivileged, stand with the group of people that are privileged, non-persecuted, the movement just sounds stronger. Like when black people and white people stand together, the whole thing about racism just strongs. So for me, when men and women stand together to kind of, cast out a lot of these inequities that exist in gender and in our workplaces, the language around and I don't even like the word empowerment anymore, because we should all be empowered. The language about supporting each other so we can get to that top, because it's about complementary. It's about seeing the light in each other and recognizing that we both have something to bring to the table. Secondly, listening. For the men who are out there who are joined in or who are sharing this with their loved ones, family members, I think it's really important to listen. So much of the time we've been fed with this conventional way of thinking that when we hear something different, we just dismiss it. No, it's not about hearing, it's about taking a step back to actually listen to what the women around and even to what the men around you are saying, because there are definitely reformed men who are out there who understand what you and I are talking about today, and who can channel that message even better to some of the men who are out there. So listening is one thing which I've come to really appreciate for me and for others. It's just I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. I have no idea what it was like growing up as you, having to have my mom, sit up, chin up and walk upright and stuff like that. But by listening to you, now I have your perspective. Now I understand why you do things that you do. And it allows me to be appreciative and less critical, because we get into this place of being critical instead of being curious, and then it just defeats the whole purpose of getting to know each other, getting to connect with each other. So that was number two. Number three, I agree with literally everything that you just said about asserting your rights, speaking up for yourself. I've seen a lot more women come to that. Is leaning into their masculine energy without losing that feminine side of themselves. I'll say that again. Leaning into your masculinity without losing that feminine side of yourself. I think it's so important in this day and age, because it's beautiful. We have both. And I know we were going to talk about the energies and energy management, and we're coming to this top of the hour.
Oh, it shouldn't
But
take long. I'll just tap from whatever I've already talked about. So yeah.
take it away. No, I mean, like, so just to close that thought there, the energy management piece, because for me, I thought it was always about the masculine way, the top down, the hand, the heavy handed. But what I've come to discover is that true leadership requires the both sides. Yeah, it requires a heavy hand now and then, but we are at a time in the world right now where we need a different way. We need a paradigm shift. We need more of that soft way, and soft is not equivalent to weak. So I just had to say that.
And I think that's what a lot of women generally think when they're out working is they think soft is equal to weak because people perceive that as weakness. And what I've come to find out is that the softer I am, the more everybody's guard is down and they're more likely to reveal themselves. Then you understand who you're dealing with much better.
Yeah,
And so I tend to shock people sometimes when I'm quite heavy-handed and very direct, and just it's a lot for people to get sometimes from me, seeing that I'm already very talkative and very opinionated about things. And oh, talking about opinionated is the same. Okay, for example, the story I told you with the boss, where I sat down and I leaned in and I rested in my femininity.
yeah,
That's what it is because I was able to speak clearly, concisely, knew my job description, and actually talk about my achievements at work without coming off as, yes, look at me, I did this, and I'm doing it well, and da 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 da. This is the masculine way of doing things. It's like a show. I have to, look at this.
exactly.
My team did that. We're just awesome like this, and we're just gonna kick ass, and we're gonna keep moving. Move fast, break shit, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
great.
Rah, rah,
It's
rah.
great. Yeah, it's awesome. The energy is awesome. I love that energy. However, the way it comes from a woman, it has to come from a different channel. And me being the rara person that I can be, when I realized that it was not working because it just came off really tacky. And now, I'm a long distance runner, right? Anderson, we're runners. Now,
Yeah.
when we're racing, yeah, we are rara from top to bottom because I needed to get to the finish line. Masculine energy right there. But when you're at work, it takes softening, and when especially the moment where the attacks and the daggers start coming to you, that is not the time to rara. All you're doing to a man is that he sees competition. It's like, yes, I got her right where I wanted her. Now I can
Mm,
fight and I can dominate, and they will dominate, ladies and gentlemen. They will dominate 9 times out of 10. When the
mm,
daggers are coming at you, that pressure is really binding. That is your cue to rest and digest. Vagal nerve connects your brain to your gut. Everything else in between tends to relax, rest, and digest. Once you've relaxed, I'm a sci fi person and I have a little boy, so I think in sci fi movies when I explain things. Think about the fun Asian movies where all the ninjas are throwing stars at you and they just suddenly stop right here. That is what rest and digest does. I think my
oh, I
son will be
love
proud of
that.
me for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally love it. Alex is gonna be proud for that
He's
one.
going to be
Yeah,
so
I
proud.
love that.
But
Yeah.
that's what it feels like. It's like the rest and digest disarms people, whether it's perceived or not. It disarms people because then now there's nothing to attack.
Mm,
Even when they go, oh, you see, we told you she just walked out of the room. She has nothing to say. Oh, you see, she's been in her office for the last 3 hours and did not come out since we said all those things. Think about it as rest and digest. Think about where you're sitting. Think about who you are in those moments and find out how you can resolve conflict in that moment. That is where your feminine energy like just jumps right in. So that when you're coming out, you're not coming out with daggers and stars to throw at them. What you're coming out with is a feather, an olive branch. But don't forget the thing about feathers. Feathers, when put together, can fly very far away. An olive branch is also a stick that you can use to hit somebody. So those things are rest and digest, they're soft, but you can use that to have that masculine energy right behind it to say, I hear you, I see, or I do not appreciate the way you're coming at me with this. So here's what we're going to do. Olive branch, they see the olive branch and the flowers or the feathers and they think, it's soft. We're not doing anything with that response. But the more feathers you gather, the better you can fly. The more olive branches you hand out, the more sticks you're building with.
Powerful.
Rest and digest. When the pressure is coming down on you, that is not the time to go head to head with men, because to men, when you're doing this, it's a competition. When you're standing beside them, it's a relationship. Same thing at home. This is the part at home that makes the difference. Try to talk to your significant others, especially when things are heated. Try not to sit across from him. Sit next to him, have that conversation, go for a walk, anything that does not put you up as a barrier or a competition works like magic every single time. Like
Amazing.
I said, all these tips and tricks are part of my life, but the women I've got to share space with have given me this. It's like universal for a lot of us for all the things I've talked about, whether it's at home or whether it's at work. So I want the women to try this even at work. The next time you're sitting with male company, your co-workers, and there's something that needs to be done, like a project or whatever, try sitting next to each other and see how that works. Try sitting across and see how that works. It's going to be very different. The only time
Ooh.
that it will not change dramatically is if you have an evolved man. I hate that word, but it's necessary. It's someone who can recognize, yes, it's someone who can recognize that this person is trying to connect. The average man does not see where anybody's trying to connect, especially at work, even at
Yeah.
home. So
Yeah.
try that and see what works for you.
Amazing. Amazing. Shasha, we're getting up to the top of the hour, and there've been there've been so many incredible gems that you've shared today, and I'm grateful to you for allowing me to hold this space, to hold this space for you, and to hold this space for the millions of women who are out there who need to hear this message, because this message needs to be heard. And also for the millions and millions of men who are out there who need to hear this message, because they stand as allies to the women in this cause for equity, for justice, and for love and harmony. So I'm really grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to hold this space. Like it's such an honor for me. And I do have a question for you before we disconnect for the day. How can people find you? You know, I know you've shared so many gems, but it would be a miss, because even when you were talking about like knowing yourself, I had like 3,000 questions for you. I'm like, where do I even start? So how can people find you? And if people were, if there are women or men who are out there who are listening, who want to know how to be more supportive of other female leaders who are rising to the top, how can they tap into more of the knowledge that you have? Georgette, over to you.
Okay, so Anderson, I know we've talked about our bookshelves, and over the last few days, it has been back on my mind to
Mhm.
create my books, either the books that I read, from entertainment to personal development to business. And the first thing that I want everybody, male or female, to do is read. There's so many books out there, especially for the women. There's The Shift, there's Unstoppable, there's Lead Like a Woman. Just go and find women in leadership, and there's so much out there. For those who are Michelle Obama fans, Becoming is one of those books where she talks about leadership, her own part that she played, whether it's at home and whether it's in the political arena. Read books. For the men listening, when a woman tells you, this is what I want, this is how I feel, accept it. Accept it. There is no arguing with how a person feels. Just don't argue with how someone feels or what opinions they have. Accept that. It is up to you to decide whether you want to continue a conversation or keep that person in your life. Accept what women tell you. When they tell you something, accept it, because that is, especially if it's a lived experience, accept it and say, oh, this person told me this. Take stock of that. And which all the women in your life, take stock of that and see what similarities are there and what differences are there. It's for you now to discern how to move through life with all the women in your life, how to move through the corporate space with the women in leadership, is to accept women's lived experiences, because it gets dismissed so many times. We might be excellent at work, and my lived experience is still questioned. Like, well, why do you have to go pick up the kid? Like, it's my child. I want to pick up my kid. I don't want to
Yeah.
delegate that to someone else. That's my lived experience. I have a thing I do with him when I pick him up, you know? So
Yeah.
a lot of times we get dismissed in that aspect, and it just kind of puts you in a corner. It's like it's like you see the leader, you say, okay, she's great at what she does, and then the person behind it doesn't seem real. It's like, if you can accept that I can lead this team, how come you cannot accept my lived experience outside of this team? So, gentlemen, whatever women tell you, accept it as them telling you what is going on with them, not a generalization on women, because none of us hate all of us hate generalizations. Take that as this is this person's experience and discern for yourself what is a pattern in your own life.
I love that. I love that very much. Thank you so much, Rajed. That discernment is something that I know we all need now more than ever. Um, for those who are listening, I hope that you picked up at least one thing out of this entire conversation. At least one thing. This has literally made my day. This is a one of the best ways to kick off today. And for those who are going into the weekend, I'm sending you lots of love as you take off for the weekend. Come back next month. We're gonna keep this series going. Next month, we're going to be talking about stress management. We're going to be sharing some tips and tricks for you to use in order to manage stress and live a vibrant life. So, but this has been an incredible month. I don't think Women's History Month is fair to say there's just one month where we should talk about women's history. I think this is every single day for you and every single day for a lot of people, and this should be an ongoing conversation. Judge, it's been a pleasure. It's been wonderful. It's been so many different gems. I wish Sylvia was here. I wish Rupsha was here, but wherever they are, know they're capturing this information and they're capturing all of this energy. Um, that I just wanted to give you the last word as we close off. And I wanted to just say thank you to everybody who was able to join us today. It's been absolutely incredible having you in the audience. Mabel, Coyote, really appreciate you. Will, I see you out there. Jajet, I'll give you the final word before we close out the session. Take it away.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I know today it ended up just being Anderson and I, but I got to talk about something that I'm passionate about, and that is pretty much just women being women. And I know it's for a lot of people it sounds cliche, but I am a firm believer in the fact that if we treat the women and give women equity in whatever it is that their endeavors are, we have better communities, we have stronger communities. This is not about creating a strong woman. The average woman today is strong. Let me tell you that. They are already strong. It's about creating strong communities. So I know I tend to read a lot of spiritual things, and the world is shifting in a way where the feminine leadership is needed, where that softness needs to be infused in our everyday lives. So part of my mission is creating strong communities, not just strong women, but strong communities. When you have a strong community, you strengthen the men, you strengthen the children, we strengthen each other all the time. And we learn to be interdependent instead of codependent, because we're on in such extremes in the world right now energetically. There's more codependency than there is interdependency. So learn who you are, accept whatever a woman tells you as a lived experience, and find your own discernment. And in the meantime, let's just go enjoy being women out there. I mean, it is awesome being
Yeah.
in 2024. So thank you, Anderson, for holding the space for me.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jajet. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a lovely week and a weekend, everyone. And we'll see you next time when we get back in April. Take care, y'all, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.